And Happy New Year and welcome to an hour with the candidates, also known as Candidates Corner on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a project of the Libertarian National Committee, Joe Bishop Henchman, Chairman. Joining me tonight, John Gapso on the big boards. My name is Pat Ford. I serve as the chair of the Libertarian Party of Rhode Island. The show has, multiple purposes. In this, our first show of 2021, we seek to continue a pretty straightforward mission. We want to do nothing less than introduce you to, if at all possible, virtually every candidate running for state, city, local, hyper-local office. Folks will refer to them as down-ballot candidates. We know differently, though. After spending nearly a year on this show, we understand that the root of the libertarian movement is best taken on the hyper-local level. Folks who are in constant contact with their community and capable of fundamental changes in how people work with their local officials. We don't use the term govern here. As always, we say we use the term stewardship. What type of stewardship libertarians can have over local resources, projects, facilities. For many people, the folks that we're going to chat with tonight are the very first libertarians that they've ever met who are either running for or elected for some type of office. And those folks have a great responsibility. How they comport themselves, how they discuss the issues, how they challenge the status quo, how they engage in stewardship once elected of those folks' projects, the issues that they care about. So we're here to promote them, not only to folks who, again, might be meeting a libertarian for the first time, but also to folks in different affiliate groups from around the nation. What I believe we've started to accomplish in our first year, if you will, of broadcast, is to illustrate to people that the challenges, the importance, the issues that candidates in states, like tonight, Illinois, are similar and as provocative as folks in California, as folks in Massachusetts. And each affiliate's respective candidates and elected leaders are as important to those people in some far-flung affiliates as they are to the people locally. We're building a great tradition here. We're running campaigns that, not always victorious, are hard-charging, fact-based, issues-dominated. Folks continue to remark when they meet a libertarian candidate that their first reaction is almost shock when they ask said candidate about an issue, and that candidate answers directly. And that's not something that's clearly prominent in elected office today. Tonight, for the first time in 2021, we're going to have and feature tonight the great state of Illinois. After November's elections, what we decided to do was change the format a little bit. Have a candidate running for local office, or maybe a candidate who has just been elected to local office, and then feature a state chairman so that folks, again, across the libertarian universe, if you will, can understand what challenges that campaign, that chairman is running in that affiliate. It's been great so far. There's commonality, and yet there are some unique issues that come up based on geography and, the political makeup of a given state. And we all learn together from it. Joining me for the first time, and as they say in show business, needs no introduction, yet somehow we always will, is someone who is a prominent figure in the libertarian movement here in this nation. He hails from Illinois, but he's also involved with the Libertarian National Committee. He's been an activist throughout his libertarian life, if you will. And the good humor and sometimes the righteous indignation that John Phillips has given us has been, sort of like a lighthouse in the movement. He's prominent because of the respect he's generated around the nation, taking on heads-on issues, not only on the LNC, but also as a candidate. He's an entrepreneur, self-employed. He lives a libertarian life. John Phillips, welcome to an hour with the candidates for the very first time.
Thanks for having me, Pat.
It's great to see you in this format because, again, it's sometimes leadership allows you the liberty to ask folks to do what you may or may not be doing yourself. It's not the case here. You've taken on some significant challenges in the past couple of years representing your region on the LNC, but at the same time, you're willing to run for office. And as I've said on the show a number of times, running for elected office in this nation, I believe, is the second greatest patriotic act, other than serving in our nation's defense, if you will. So tell us, but people want to see sort of the background of John Phillips. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And as we always ask every week, what was your libertarian moment? When did that light bulb go off? When did you decide that, well, you were going to, if you will, devote a significant part of your life, a significant part of your day to liberty?
Well, yeah, okay. So that's a whole lot of information to cover in a short period of time. As you mentioned, I am a business owner. I currently own and operate a mechanic shop or garage. Previously, I have owned and operated restaurants, bars, video stores, cyber cafes. So it's not my first time at that rodeo. As far as my libertarian moment, wow. I mean, it was kind of a slow growth. So I don't know if there really was one. I was politically active even as early as middle school. And often kind of at odds with my mother, who was a very staunch Democrat, and my father, who was pretty heavily Republican. And so I, somewhat surprise, I didn't agree with either of them, and heard about Ron Paul in the '80s, and started checking some libertarian things out. But I was not into joining at then and for a very long time, then I stayed aware of the Libertarian Party, and kind of kept track of them, and then when Ross Perot ran the first time, I volunteered for his campaign at a very super low level, just handing out stuff and that kind of thing. But then Harry Brown in '96 really kind of woke me up, and I said, "Wow, I really think that these guys are where we should be." And but I still wasn't a joiner. But I voted for Harry, and I voted for Harry again. But I still didn't join. And then in the mid 2000s, I started, there were some things going on that I wasn't super happy with. And I had a lot of stuff going on in my personal life. So it was like, okay, well, maybe I'm still not going to join. Then 2012, Gary Johnson came along, and while I didn't join the party, I promoted his campaign pretty heavily locally. And with no affiliation to the campaign at all, just like, hey, this is my guy. And then in 2016, I just said, okay, hey, things just keep getting worse, and the old parties keep doing the same things over and over and over, and somebody's got to stand up and do something, and nobody's doing that here locally. And so I contacted the state chair at the time, who was Lex Green, and said, hey, how do I start a local affiliate? And he said, and they said, Illinois, luckily enough, has a very easy system. They have it all packaged up. They send you the email, say, hey, you got to do this, this, and this. So I gathered a group of like-minded people, and we started a chapter here. And then I just continued to jump in with both feet.
Running for a public office. Now, you are running for city council
for
the city of Decatur, Illinois.
Second time.
We've often talked on this show about the importance of city councils. Again, it's I think a strong argument that if elected, you will have more potential impact on folks running as a councilman, running a community, a complicated community like Decatur, than you might ever have as a state rep or United States congressman. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's the way it should be. I have lots of thoughts on the issue. Part of the reason I'm running right now is because I actually, I feel like our current city council, several of the members don't actually listen to the community, and have their own agendas that they like to push, and but I believe that the city council is. I was just thinking about this earlier, and as libertarians, we always say that taxation is theft, and taxation is theft. I mean, extortion, whatever you want to call it. But if you assume that at some point in time we've got to have some level of taxation, if you accept that, which some people will not at all, and some people will. I think in this country, we're doing it almost exactly backwards. If you look at your taxes, excluding property tax in some places, but everybody, when you're looking at your taxes and you're not seeing all the hidden taxes that governments hit you with, right. It often feels like you're paying more to the federal government and then a little bit less to the state and then a little bit less to the local. And my personal opinion is that we ought to reverse that, and we ought to reverse that in fact, not just appearance. And that the federal government ought to take very little of our money. Mm-hmm. The federal government really only has a few jobs, one of which is defense, and one of which is, of course, international relations. Other than that, they really they're not supposed to do a lot. But we find them interfering in every facet of our daily lives. Mm-hmm. And we need the local governments and the state governments to say, okay, hey, no, enough's enough of that. Even like we talk about, the drinking age. A lot of people don't realize that the reason that so many states took the drinking age up was because the federal government said, okay, we're not going to give you this money unless you raise the drinking age. Well, why is the federal government taking our money and then handing it back to us after taking a fee and paying for administration? Mm-hmm. None of that should be happening. So,
yeah, amen, brother. It's there was a powerful analogy going around only during the run up to the November election this year, and it was only slightly tongue in cheek. Break someone's leg and then handing crutches and we expect a thank you.
That's the government.
That's the government, and that's the impact they have financially with all sorts of unfunded mandates.
Hi, Jack.
And I don't doubt that we could spend an entire show with folks like you who, are boots on the ground, as well as being nationally involved on unfunded mandates. But let's talk about Decatur. First of all, you've got an interesting set of elections here. You have a primary, I believe, in February, and then you've got the general election when? In April?
In April 6th. Yeah, it's actually the first primary for a city council election in the city ever, I believe. Mm-hmm. State law says if you have more than 4 people running for an office, that they have to have a primary. And since there's 3 seats open, they're all at large, and now we have 13 people running. That took us over that, and so now we have to have a primary. Mm-hmm. And like I said, 13 people for 3 seats. That I have said for a while now that ought to give our city council exactly a very clear image of exactly how unpopular some of the things they're doing is.
In real terms, when we have candidate conversations right now, there are 2 eras to be discussed. There's pre-COVID, and now there's post-COVID, and they've each got their own set of challenges and issues. Tell us a little bit about Decatur. I know you're the county seat of Macon County in the great state of Illinois, but give us a little feel for its makeup, its composition, its economics. Who are the major employers? A little bit of a snapshot.
Okay. Decatur for a very long time was a factory town surrounded by agriculture. So we had many factories, and over the last couple decades, a few of them have closed and left. And so, unfortunately, we're kind of a city on the downturn, which, opinions vary on how to turn that around. We went from having Firestone, Caterpillar, Zexcel. I can't even list them all, but we lost several of them. And then we've still got ADM and Tate & Lyle, which are big food processors, which are but they've taken their corporate headquarters that were here and moved them out of here. So while we've still got the factory jobs, we've lost some of the higher paying jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of a city in flux. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I watched Pittsburgh go through a lot of the same kind of things with the steel when the steel mills all closed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of liken it to that in microcosm. Right. Similar issues as far as population outmigration and things like that, and job loss, and trying to bring in new employers, and keep the budget in check. And then you throw in that because it is a smaller town, we do have some, people that come in here that have quite a bit of money that can have a little bit more of an inordinate effect on local politics, simply because it's big fish in a small pond. Right.
Incredibly enough, you might not be aware of this, and for folks that know me well, it's kind of humorous. I spent this first 6 or 7 years of my post-college career as a corporate tax accountant, and I actually focused on state and local taxes. And there's a term in accounting and politics and business, sort of a subcurrent. There's something called the effective tax rate. And Illinois in general has one of the highest effective tax rates in the nation, which is going to affect exactly the issue that you're talking about. You may still be the home of some of those precious mill jobs, which very often will at least have a higher salary base. But because of the effective tax rate, you tend to lose those high-paying corporate jobs, which can really, support the community.
Oh yeah, and then they play games, so was it last year? I think it was last year. They made this big deal about how they didn't raise property taxes. Okay, well, that was only technically true, and only in a certain way, because the way they decide the property taxes is they decide, okay, we want to get this much money from property taxes, and we're not going to change that. So we want to raise, and I'm just making the numbers up right now. We want to get $5 million from property taxes, and so we're going to get that again. So we're not, so they claimed that wasn't raising taxes. Well, except that property values went down, and so your effective tax rate went up. If you were paying this, if they wanted to get the same amount out of you, the outmigration of the population. So then they had less people paying property taxes, and then a lot of people were abandoning properties, things like that. And then when the whole general area property value goes down, if you want to, as I said before, that it changes to a tax increase. And I called them out on that several times when they did it. And this year they're doing the same thing, but they're being very careful to say, okay, we are freezing the levy, and they're so even not winning, in some ways, at least we're bringing some more transparency to the subject, which is nice.
Well, and it's in the background, as you mentioned, you've got this population shift that's taking place. I read a topside analysis of a report by the Illinois Policy Group, and in cities of your size, with basically a population of over 50,000, Decatur was faced with the fastest shrinking population from 2010 until the later part of the decade. In something in the range of 4 to 5%. That's not insignificant, particularly since that's typically, with the type of migration that's taking place, those are higher income job shifts away from the city.
And some of that though, just so everybody's, because I like to be honest and real with numbers. People always throw these numbers out to make things look worse than they are, or better than they are. I like to look at both sides and say, okay, here's what it really is. Now, some of that is, as I mentioned, Tate and Lyle and ADM and some of the factory jobs closing. So some of that is those jobs going away. But some of it is just people basically, or call it urban sprawl, call it moving to suburbia, whatever. We've got some surrounding communities. And so like when we saw the housing market crash back in the last decade, Decatur took a huge hit. but and then didn't recover as quickly as everybody else because people were moving into the surrounding areas. They were still working in Decatur or the Decatur area, but they were living in the local towns like Mount Zion, Forsyth, Maroa, Warrensburg, and so they were. So that out migration wasn't all away. Some of those jobs are still here, but those people now live in a town just outside of here.
Now,
you see that in big cities a lot too, but it's it's hit our area pretty hard. I mean, we actually, we were rated one of the, I believe at one time, #1 worst place for Black people to live, despite the fact that we have a much higher than the national average Black population. We have taken all kinds of hits like that. We had Macon County had something like 28% of the population on welfare, most of the population being in Decatur. So you've got a lot of really bad statistics there that we keep popping up in.
Right. Now, one of the ways that cities often, if you will, innovate out of that mold is to create, if you will, entertainment being the focus economically. Now, it's of course that's been complicated by COVID. That's a strategy that's sort of in flux right now, but it's been popular and it's worked in some cases. I know just from reading, the downtown community is facing some challenges. The Lincoln Theater, I believe, is a major landmark, if you will, downtown. That's facing some changes. And I bring up these specifics only because as a libertarian and someone who is clearly believes in the free market, what do you think the role of government should be in challenging these, and facing down these, exogenous crises like COVID and these economic crises when as medium-sized cities are forced to redefine themselves?
My answer is very simple. I ran on this last time. I'm running on it again. It's get government out of the way. Every time they stick their nose in, they make it worse. They don't make it better. Right. They try and particularly our local government. But let's talk about that Lincoln Theater for a minute. The Lincoln Theater has, gone through a whole bunch of different ups and downs. And currently, a good friend of mine, a gentleman named Mark Scranton, is trying to get it renovated and redone. And he's trying to do it privately and fundraise. Great, love it. It's a great project. I support him fully in it. But then we've got COVID come in, and he can't have events to fundraise, right? Which has created challenges. Because the governor has shut down things, and I mean, we can't even do outside events, and be way apart like you can in some places. It's really kind of crazy. But the biggest thing they can do is get out of the way. I mean, our government's doing the exact opposite of that. They turned around this year and they raised permit fees for everybody, despite the fact that they have claimed that that city revitalization is their focus. Well, if city revitalization is your focus, why are you making it more expensive to revitalize neighborhoods? They turned around and they do crazy things like the government came in a couple years ago, spent $200,000 a piece on homes that they couldn't turn around and sell for $70,000. Okay, that's how the government works here, and like most places, So obviously, I mean, if they would get out of the way and let private industry do that, private industry is not going to spend $200,000 on a house they can't sell for 70. Then they turn around and they get bailed out by a rich gentleman who's very generous. And so I sometimes we disagree, but I want to recognize that he's a very generous man that helps the city out in many ways, Howard Buffett, turns around and gives them $1 million. And I'm going, why would you give them $1 million when they've just proved that they can't spend the money wisely? Why wouldn't you give it to somebody who can? Why wouldn't you do it yourself? You've got a foundation, or that why wouldn't you say, okay, hey, let me do this? Because the city's already proven that they can't do it. And then they turn around and they have things like, all right, so we're sitting here and COVID's going around and they're discussing the effects on the population and small business. and how we're, and what we're going to do. And there's arguments about, well, what kind of fee are we going to charge the gambling establishments? Can we raise the fee? Can we not raise the fee? Can we give them the fee back? Can we? And people, they're discussing, okay, let's not give the fee to the local businesses. Let's give it to the people who provide them the machines. Do you not understand how business works? The people who you provide the machines are then going to pass that fee on down. And like I like to say, trickle down economics is not a thing, but trickle down taxation is. And every tax that gets passed on business, one way or the other, ends up getting paid by the people.
Mm-hmm.
That bit, because it's an expense for that business. So they calculate it in their profit and loss and how they've got to do a thing. And so then they decide how they're going to price their product or their service based on those expenses. And so guess what? The thing goes up. And the consumer at the end of the day is the one who pays for it.
Absolutely.
And so our city council is sitting here discussing how, we're going to, effectively raise property taxes. We're going to, and then they were sitting here discussing how to discussing raising the actual tax itself to fund more police this year. Okay. The population has dropped, as you said, 5% a year. The crime rate is actually down less than it was in 1980, yet we have more police, or the same amount of police officers that we had. All these police officers who, once again, by Howard Buffett, have been given lots of extra equipment and all the modern tools to do their jobs. So should be able to do their jobs better and easier. But we need more of them. They're trying to raise the, well, how does that work? That's not a sustainable model. And one of the reasons that they have to have it is because they've decided that they're going to opt out of allowing marijuana businesses here in Decatur, which, hey, love marijuana, hate marijuana. Let's assume that all the people who talk about the negative effects of marijuana are right. Okay, just for argument's sake, not saying that they are, but let's assume that they're right. You're going to allow all the other surrounding communities to reap the benefits of legalization while we still deal with the negatives, but we don't get the benefits.
You'll essentially push out the economic benefits to communities that will then be able to profit from it, both spiritually and philosophically, as well as financially, and then yet you'll internalize the very problem. They'll bring them home literally with it. It's
right. And so all these people, they're going to the surrounding communities and buying it, or still buying it here in the black market. Mm-hmm. And so still contributing to all these problems that they were concerned about. And it's deep is the stupid, as they would say. We only got a couple minutes left. Talk to me about schools in Decatur and in terms of school funding. So many communities, and this is the genius of running spiritual libertarians for local office, because education is a center point of the libertarian philosophy, as is taxation. And they're inexorably connected at this point in American politics. What's the interesting thing about Decatur in schools and Illinois in schools is that the city government has absolutely nothing to do with the school board. The school board is a separately elected function. As I was telling us before we went live, Illinois has more units of government than the next closest state, by almost double. The next closest state is California. They've got somewhere around 4,300. We've got over 7,000. One of which is school boards. And the school boards, vote on their own taxes and their own things. I sent my kids to private school, and I'm still sending my youngest to private school, the local Catholic school, because the Decatur school district is kind of a mess, to be perfectly honest. I mean, they're trying very hard. A lot of the teachers are working very hard. A lot of the teachers' aides are working very hard, despite the fact that the school district tries to screw them over this last year. And that's actually a lot of the reason for that out migration I talked about earlier, where they're out migrating out to the surrounding communities, because the surrounding communities have better school districts, or at least perceived to be better school districts. I mean, you can get a very good education from Decatur public schools. Do not let me cell that you cannot. But like a lot of city school districts, they have issues with population and overpopulation, and and the issues that go along with that, and then you throw in the lower economic status of that we were discussing earlier, and then so you have high dropout rates and other activities that you negatively impact student outcomes. Sending my kids to private school, I kind of bailed out of that, rightly or wrongly. But some of my friends are very active in that. Matter of fact, another candidate for city council, my friend Jacob Jenkins, I was teasing him about why, because he's very active in the schools. And I said, why aren't you running for school board instead? Well, it turns out where he lives doesn't allow him to. But right now we're in the interesting thing. Their school board is also getting elected right now, and none of the incumbents are running again. So you have the potential of having a brand new school board that has never done anything like it before. So it could be a very interesting year. But considering how most of the population feels like they've handled things over the last year, I'm not sure that anybody thinks they could do any worse.
Yeah, these are, regardless of how faithful an individual local official is to the ethos and to the needs of the community, these are difficult times to take on that type of responsibility. And it was a huge challenge even before Corona. So again, I talk about individual service and the challenges to one's life, to one's family, to one's privacy, to one's economics if they're running a business or have to take significant time to work off it. Again, that's why the true patriots are the ones who are willing to dive into these often.
What always surprises me about Decatur is that there aren't more libertarians here, because we as libertarians believe in private charity, and we have one of the most giving cities that I've ever lived in. And private charity is huge here, and there's always events. There's always things going on. I mean, I just helped with with an event that the local Black Chamber put on to give gifts to the needy this year. That was particularly needed because of COVID and all the people out of work. Our food drive raises so much food every year that we give it to surrounding communities because we can't use it all. When Flint, Michigan happened, we were my same friend Jacob Jenkins helped organize, and truckloads and truckloads of water sent up to Flint, Michigan, and so the people here in Decatur already know that private charity and private efforts are the way to make these things happen, and they make it happen all the time. And yet, when you suggest to them that that's the way that things ought to be and that we need to get government out of the way, they seem confused by that. And I'm like, you're already living it. Right. You're already doing it. Let's just continue that.
Their own private little acts of anarchy every day, their own private acts of love to their community. It sounds like you've got an outstanding group of people there fighting, again, the term we often use is exogenous events and challenges that threaten to overwhelm them, yet they find within themselves the spirituality, if you will, to truly, we hate this word, but truly govern themselves. It sounds like a wonderful opportunity for libertarians to get elected and to channel and harvest that sort of ethos and make it part of their quote unquote government. It just sounds outstanding. John, every 35 minutes have sort of flown by.
They always do when we get to talking.
I just feel like we could continue this conversation forever. A little short on time now. We always want to give candidates an opportunity to engage in what we lovingly refer to as shameless self-promotion. So, it's the election season is kind of obviously pretty quiet right now. There aren't many elections going on in February, March, and April. And by the way, folks, if you're listening to this show for the first time and you are participating in anything this spring, please reach out to us so we can give you an opportunity to meet the rest of the libertarian planet here, if you will. But John, tell us where folks can find out more about your campaign, your city, what your needs are in terms of being successful. Lay it out for us.
Okay. Well, obviously, I think they put it up there earlier. JohnPhillipsForLiberty.com has a little bit about the campaign and a lot about all my other activities as well. It's JPForLiberty.com on Facebook, I believe. But if you look for John Phillips for Decatur City Council on Facebook, you'll find it. Thank you for the link to donate, because honestly, excitingly, I've already raised a fair amount of money. I mean, for a local campaign for me, my last campaign for city council, I spent $600 and got 27% of the vote. Spent less than a quarter of a vote. I've already raised $1,000, and I had somebody contact me earlier today when they found out I was going to be on your show, and say, "Hey, I will match up to $500."
Excellent.
So I've got a donor willing to match $500 worth of donations. On my Facebook, it's just PayPal, or on my website, it's just PayPal. I didn't get crazy with all the other different things, but or you can contact me and email me and send, and I'll give you an address to send a check, whatever. But I have some local volunteers that are already starting to step up. I've got a gentleman that's offered to help me fundraise with some local contractors and things like that. So we're working hard. The biggest thing, honestly, is just continue to support all your local candidates. If you're nationwide, I mean, obviously, I will happily take your support. But there are local candidates all over the country that could use your support. And the Frontier Project is working very hard for them. And so, while I would love your support, obviously, as a member of the national committee, I would be remiss to not point out that all those other people are as well.
No, excellent. But again, that's what's defined your career and service to the party nationally, as well as on a local level. The fact that you've been willing to be so given to literally everyone. I had the honor of serving with you for a few months on the Libertarian National Committee, and it was very clear to me very quickly that you were a go-to person for an additional perspective and an insight into what really mattered about the issues at the time. John, listen, we at the show here, we wish you nothing but the best. I hope you'll stay in touch with me as the results come in. I have every confidence that you're going to do very well, folks. We need to step up for John. This is a great project for us to keep our eyes on the ball for this spring. A significant post in a significant city in a significant state, and again, someone who spiritually can really live the type of stewardship that's necessary for a city that is itself facing so many challenges. So John, again, nothing but the best, and let us know, and you put up to get a little post about that match. We'll be sure to share it all over the place from here. Another one of those times, folks, when even in challenging times, if we can find a little bit in our heart to donate to John's campaign, the results are so outsized. So it's so important. So John Phillips, he's running for the Decatur City Council, if you will, Decatur, Illinois. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Pat, and enjoy talking to Steve. He's one of my favorite people in the entire party, nationally or statewide.
Yeah, we're bringing Steve right up right now. Steve, do you have any as the guru, if you will, the head honcho, the chief water buffalo of the Illinois Libertarian Party? Any advice or any kind words about Mr. Phillips?
Well, John is one of the first folks that I met in the Libertarian Party of Illinois when I first got involved, not voting for Libertarians. I was doing that before I got involved with the party infrastructure. But after joining the party and getting involved in leadership, John was probably the third or fourth person I met at a local meeting here. He actually traveled to our county, and because he was running, and I think he wanted to meet everybody and also see if he could get any extra cash for that race, probably. But he's one of the most passionate libertarians, and John represents our state on the LNC. And I can tell you, anytime that I have any trouble whatsoever, I go to John immediately, and things happen. And I think that that role is reversed sometimes too, when John needs things from states. And I think Region 6, shout out to all the other state chairs. We're we feel very well represented by John, and I think John feels well supported by the states in our region too. So
Absolutely.
Outstanding. John, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Folks, if you're just joining us, you are listening to An Hour with the Candidates, aka Candidates Corner, on LBTV, Libertarian Party Television, a project of the Libertarian National Committee. Joe Bishop has been chairperson, who's been so supportive of this effort. Joining us for the very first time, and I have not yet had an opportunity to meet him in the age of the Rona, if you will, is Steve Suess. He is, in fact, the chairperson of the Illinois Libertarian Party. First of all, congratulations on that, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Yes, congratulations. Or most of the time, it's a position that I love to serve in. The times where it's not, the good times make up for it. So, well,
absolutely. And tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and again, I'm always going to ask. The list we have, if you will, somewhere up here in the vault of the various ways that folks became involved with the movement is as diverse as the people themselves. How did you get involved in the Libertarian Party?
Well, I had voted Libertarian for previous elections, and I was in Illinois, and then I moved to Ohio, and I had voted for Libertarians basically since I was old enough to vote. I usually have a rainbow ballot. By the way, there are some. I can usually find a red or a blue candidate that I can at least trust a little bit. So, I was always somebody who was a little bit more independent thinking and voted more based on the candidate than the party. And then, I learned more about the libertarian philosophy, and I was like, yeah, I can jive with this, but never really got involved in party leadership or worked on a campaign or anything like that. And then in 2016, I was kind of driven by national politics to get involved in the LP in 2016. I did not. I had always been a little. I don't know if upset's the right word, but I don't know. I was very upset about the way how negative the campaigning was in 2016, and I decided that politics was going to keep going in that same direction unless I got involved. So I got involved with my local affiliate here in McLean County, Illinois, in Bloomington Normal, and within the next 6 months, I was running for office, and after that, I was the local affiliate chair here, and I was doing communications work for the Libertarian Party of Illinois, with some, newsletters, mass emails, and press contacts, that type of stuff. And as several of the LP volunteers who are watching will probably attest to, as soon as you volunteer to do one thing and you show that you are competent enough to do it, you start getting asked to do a whole lot of other things, and the next thing you know, you're state chair. So that's kind of my Libertarian Party story. Yeah.
No, that's outstanding. Talk to us about Illinois. Now, I'll give you my brief perspective on Illinois. I've spent a fair amount of time there traveling on business. I've had accounts in Illinois, despite the fact that I sell commercial vehicles in the greater Boston area. But like so many, one of the great film noirs, one of the great cinematic achievements, if you will, in American film was really what brought me to being interested in Illinois. And of course, I'm talking about the great movie, The Blues Brothers. So I'm well familiar with Lower Wacker Drive and a necessary force in the apprehension of when Jake Elwood Blues is fully authorized. But the stories of corruption are rampant. The stories of violence in Chicago are epic, despite the fact that Chicago is obviously an international city, despite the fact that there are so many great universities in Illinois, despite the fact that there are wonderful people in Illinois. What are your biggest challenges? Tell us about the structure of the Libertarian Party of Illinois and some of the successes. And by the way, we've had the opportunity to interview a number of Illinois candidates here, and just some amazing people. To me, Joshua Flynn was one of the great candidates in the country, a very soft-spoken individual who is turned on fire, if you will, when it comes to issues surrounding his community. Talk about candidate recruitment. Give us the whole picture.
Well, we in Illinois, and several viewers probably know this. We have some of the worst ballot access laws in the entire country, and I know other state chairs will tell you that, but Illinois truly is kind of bottom of the barrel. It's a 5% threshold to get established party status, and even the signature requirements for non-established, what they call new parties in Illinois, are sometimes 20-fold. I mean, it can really be incredible the amount of signatures that a candidate needs to get, depending on the level of government that they're or level of stewardship that they're running for. That said, we were able to win a lawsuit against our State Board of Elections and our governor here in Illinois. This past year, we got some ballot access relief. And basically, we were left with signature requirements that were similar to the Democrats and Republicans. And we were able to run, to my knowledge, more candidates than we've ever ran in a general election in November. And now it's just, learning our lessons from those campaigns and getting those folks to motivated to run for office again, because you gotta walk before, or you gotta crawl before you can walk, and you gotta walk before you can run. So there were some candidates who lost and took it a little hard, but those folks are now regrouping, understanding what they learned, so they can apply it for future elections.
Yeah, I think one of the great takeaways from this past November's election is that both on the national and the state and local level, we made enormous gains. And okay, the first thing people would say, well, 2016 to 2020, I'll say on a national level, it's clear that for the very first time, can be established in the political world that there is a libertarian base of people that we need to grow, but who voted for a libertarian grown hometown libertarian candidate for the presidency. And, and we had people on that campaign who experienced a significant growth, worked their hearts out, and accomplished some wonderful things, despite the fact that we were, in the midst of a national pandemic, if you will, despite the fact that in-person campaign was supposed to be limited. We had a 50-state campaign, really, by a libertarian candidate, and we need to take great heart in that. On the state and local level, again, you had some candidates there that did tremendous work. Now, you're fighting the face of arguably one of the most corrupt regimes, if you will, in America, and a level of corruption that is endemic and almost in the political DNA. And what I'd love to, if you could speak to that. And also, I mean, to me, what was one of the more amazing aspects of this was you had a ballot referendum this year that talked about taxation from a flat level to a graduated level, which potentially could make even things worse. Tell us about the political DNA in Illinois.
Oh boy, that's a loaded question, isn't it? So I'll talk about two of those things. You mentioned the what they called in Illinois, what they branded as the fair tax amendment, where they wanted to move us to a graduated income tax structure. Right. However, what that would have taken would have been an amendment to the Illinois Constitution. So not only would this have had to pass by a majority, but it actually would have had to pass by 60% to have taken effect, and it didn't even get a majority. But there was so much wrong with this income tax amendment, because yes, it did allow for a graduated income tax structure, but there were so many other things that they kind of hid into the language of that they were changing to the Illinois Constitution. For example, there was a provision in the current language that we're keeping because this income tax amendment didn't pass, that said that there could only be one income tax in Illinois. So that's the state income tax, which means municipalities do not have the authority to tax income in Illinois. However, it got rid of that language, so we would have started to see municipal income tax in Illinois. Right. I'm assuming probably as soon as it passed. It also did not define that the graduated structure had to force higher earners to pay more. It just said that it allowed different earners to pay different rates. So we could have found ourselves in a structure where it would have been perfectly fine under this new language where we had higher earners paying a smaller percentage of their income. So it was just flawed from top to bottom. And, to their credit, our Illinois voters saw through it and voted it down. And you mentioned the Illinois Policy Institute earlier tonight, which is it's a policy action group in our state's capital, Springfield. They do excellent work. Adam Schuster over there at the Illinois Policy Institute is a friend of the Libertarian Party of Illinois, and we've collaborated on several issue-based things, and the IPI is awesome. The other thing you brought up was the corruption from our governor, and we are living in weird times in Illinois. So our governor has passed an emergency order using emergency rulemaking, and there are things in that order that are enforceable in the law. So things like forcing bars and restaurants to distance, use social distancing, mask compliance, that type of thing. However, he also announced an executive order, but it doesn't have any legal teeth to it, that said bars and restaurants can't operate indoors. Well, I don't know if you've ever been in Illinois in December, but that pretty much puts the kibosh on almost everything. But it's not enforceable by the law. So now you have tyrant mayors who are, in Illinois, mayors are typically the heads of their city's liquor commissions, abusing the powers within the liquor commission to try and enforce this indoor dining ban, which of course only forces restaurants and bars that serve alcohol to close indoors. Meanwhile, your restaurants and bars that don't can stay open. It's just it's such a, we've talked about how, the whole patchwork enforcement of these COVID regulations has almost made things worse. And Illinois is probably one of the biggest examples of that.
What are your priorities and goals, if you will, for the coming year? I mean, in one sense, it appears to me that you might have something unforeseen for most of the country, which is significant local, what I call hyper-local races around the state. How much are you gearing up for those? Are there other examples of tonight's guest, John Phillips, running for that type of seat? And what are your priorities in terms of the organization itself, in terms of affiliates? What are your goals?
Well, as a political party, our goal is to get people elected every single year. So we have libertarians running from the very tip north of the state next to Wisconsin all the way down to the Metro East area, which is St. Louis area, but the Illinois side of the river, and other parts of southern Illinois. So we are running candidates from every geographical location in the state. We have some that have picked races that actually do not have another candidate running. So we've already got a few victories that we can chalk up in the April election. So we are running a ton of candidates. This is actually our list of candidates from this past November's election, because to give you a kind of a view of what Illinois municipal elections look like, they're all nonpartisan, or they're weirdly partisan in that towns and municipalities sometimes create their own political parties, and those are the parties you use, which is a two-party system, just with different names attached to it. But most municipal elections in Illinois are nonpartisan, and the petitioning period was going on during the general election. So Illinois does municipal elections very strangely. John and I were talking before this, John Phillips and I, how we're pretty sure it was designed that way to ensure that there was as little voter turnout as possible in the municipal elections, which are, just 5-6 months after you elect a president or a governor. So, but we've got candidates running all over the state, and I'm excited for this election. Other than that, we are kind of retooling our local affiliates. We're trying to grow more local affiliates. We have some that have participation has gone off where others have kind of done better. So we're going to try and regroup and make sure those folks are getting the resources they need. We are looking at hiring an executive director who would just be a paid fundraiser for the state party, not really have any administrative roles, but just help us to raise some cash, and then also, we've got a lot of other side projects going on in Illinois too. So we're certainly pretty busy.
No, that's outstanding. How many affiliates right now, roughly?
Roughly, we've got about 15 that are super active, and then we have another 5 to 10 that are, they'll have meetings occasionally, or there were people there and then they moved away to somewhere else. So again, we're trying to get the folks after those top 15 to be a little bit more active and get them a little bit more organized. So
I couldn't let an entire conversation about Illinois go without talking about the candidacy of Joshua Flynn. To me, his ability to, if you will, bring on board to the libertarian movement and also introduce people to the libertarian movement. That next step, we always talk about Larry Sharp's theory of planting a seed. His candidacy did that in parts of Chicago that I would assume haven't really seen a lot of libertarian activism. I'm hoping he's going to run again. Illinois is such a diverse state, literally, the heartland farms to inner cities of terrible tragedy. What impact did his candidacy have on the inner cities, if you will, the strategy of pursuing libertarian candidacies there? And, can we expect him to run again?
I've talked with Joshua. We've kind of steered him in the direction of running again. I think he's still recouping a little bit, because you brought up Joshua. I tell you what, he was one, not just you brought up his activism and what he did to bring the message of libertarianism to audiences that haven't heard it. But he worked harder than probably anybody else that I saw this election cycle. And it was I'm in this to win it from the very beginning. And he did very well on election day. It wasn't quite enough to get the job done. But you're right. He is a special type of communicator, and he can take the liberty message, digest it, and regurgitate it in a way that's very palatable to bringing new people to the party. Right. And that, I think, was just as beneficial as the possibility of him being our next state representative up there. The other thing I'll say about Joshua, the Chicago LP, and big shout out to Adam Balling, Justin Tucker, Brian Denny, all the folks up there. They have done such an outstanding job, and Joshua's part of that. Cook County is one of 5 new counties in Illinois that the Libertarian Party will have established party status and equal ballot access in 2022 and into 2024 as well, because of the hard work that they did up there. Unfortunately, we're at a spot where it's almost impossible to get it statewide with the way the laws are written in Illinois. Right. So now we're trying to get it in as many counties as possible, and to add Cook County to that list. Right. Joshua was part of that, and then all the other folks that I mentioned earlier were part of that too. That may have been our biggest accomplishment from this past year.
Yeah, and again, that's not to take the focus or the spotlight away from so many other folks who ran for office in Illinois. But again, if you're an old-timey political junkie like me, John F. Kennedy was elected president in Cook County, wasn't he? It is, you talk about Richard, was it Richard Daley? You talk about, I still remember when you had the first post-Daley mayor spending, what was it? She spent the weekend in Cabrini Green, which at the time was earth-shattering.
Right.
But for all of that Democratic prowess, when you look at the city of Chicago, it is, of such great promise, such great potential realized, yet so much tragedy on a daily basis. And to have the infrastructure and the world-class business center that is Chicago, to have the University of Chicago, truly one of the planet's great universities, but at the same time, to have so much death, so much tragedy is testament to the failure of that type of statist collectivist policies. And they are, there's, in so many cases, Chicago is the, if you will, the anecdote for Second Amendment legislation and Second Amendment regulation.
And for years and years and years, it was, how are we going to overcome the indoctrination that the Democratic Party has really engaged in that part of the state. And, we're not quite there yet, but people are starting to realize that they can't bank on those policies to save them, especially with politicians who usually don't even follow through with the things that they tell you they're going to do. We're wrapped up. Our Speaker of the House, Mike Madigan, has been not indicted, but he has certainly been a part of a conspiracy scheme with ComEd this year. We think we might be getting close to possibly getting some charges against him. But, the corruption in Illinois government, I know people make fun of it all the time. We've got more governors in prison than we do out of prison right now. But truly, the corruption is not a joke here. It is real, and it happens pretty often from all the way down to the local level.
Well, when you look at Blago and Resco, right? I mean, those are the poster children for bad haircuts and bad politics. Again, my hat's off to you, because again, I realize, as someone who's been an activist in Rhode Island, which is really a smaller version of Cook County on the ocean, if you will, I realize how difficult the challenges are on a day-to-day basis. And again, to make that type of change in a political DNA is not an overnight thing. It's a generational change that has to take place. And my hat's off to you and so many people in Illinois who I use a hashtag in my other media life. I call it hashtag take it personally. Clearly, people like Mr. Flynn and all the candidates in Illinois, my hat's off to them. My hat's off to all your activists, because you guys obviously take it personally. Again, time for some shameless self-promotion. How can folks find out more about the Libertarian Party of Illinois?
Two ways, lpillinois.org. We've got contact information on there, info about our state party, what our priorities are, what we're doing. We post our meeting minutes up there so you can see all that stuff. The other way, follow us on Facebook. Just search Libertarian Party of Illinois. That's one of our primary ways to reach an audience right now. And shout out to Chase Renwick. He's the guy who runs our social media. He does an awesome job with that Facebook page, and we're pretty proud of what we've been able to do through social media over the last couple of years. So Facebook, Libertarian Party of Illinois, look for it, and then lpillinois.org.
Well, listen, again, thanks for joining us on January 1st. I think the two of you and the entire Illinois team have given us a great kickoff to the year on an hour with the Candidates Corner. I hope you'll give all our love in the new year to all of the folks that are doing all the hard work, the boots on the ground in Illinois. And my heartfelt congratulations to you, and a challenge, if you will, for the new year.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate you having us on.
Steve Suess, he is the chairperson of the Libertarian Party of Illinois, facing challenges, well, as diverse and the same as so many state chairs, and dealing it with as so many folks across the libertarian planet, if you will, the libertarian universe are doing it. You can feel people kind of dusting off, if you will, the effects of the last election. A lot of folks, taking great pride, justifiably, in the gains that we made and the development, if you will, as Reason Magazine pointed out, a true libertarian base based on the efforts of our presidential candidate. We're looking forward to a great year here on the show, as long as we can be on the air. We'll continue to, if you will, have conversations with state chairs, as well as, the air quotes, down ballot candidates from around the nation. You've been listening to An Hour with the Candidates, aka Candidates Corner, on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a project of the Libertarian National Committee, Joe Bishop Henchman Chair. My name is Pat Ford. I want to thank John Gapso, the guy behind the big board, making this show work. And as always, I'm grateful to spend some time with you. We'll see you next Friday. And the Friday after that, we've already got candidate schedules. You'll see that out earlier than usual. You'll see some post this week about who's going to be joining us. It's going to be exciting. We're going to get people fired up for the new year. 2021 is not a year to take off, folks. It certainly isn't, and we're not going to do it here. Have a wonderful week, and again, Happy New Year.